This is Dominique Coco, one of my ancestors. And my grandfather is the guy on the bottom. That's his military picture from World War II with Air Force. And these are other relatives, Lemoine. So I have been trying to find my Kroger family history. It's in a red folder somewhere. The last time I think I saw it, I was going to show my ex-mother-in-law, and then I put it up, and I can't find it. So I do have the other half of the family, my mom's side, LaCour family history, some of it. So I'm going to, for posterity's sake, record some of this, and hopefully I'll find the Kroger one. It just really bugs me that I can't find it because I worked really hard on getting everybody a copy, and my copy disappears. But we're going to focus on the LaCour side. There's a lot of LaCours in Louisiana. Most of us don't even know each other. We're related necessarily, or we know we're related, but we don't know how. I didn't know my mother's family very well. I think I saw some of her aunts at a funeral once. My grandfather, Henry LaCour, was from Moraville, Louisiana. His father was known as Cy LaCour. Anyhow, history, and Coco is also a relative. So, history of the Coco. The people with the last name of Coco had the original name Baldonide or Baldonade, Baldonide. You'll find out why their surname became Coco instead. Dominique Baldonide Sr. married Miss Rabelais of Pointe Coupee Parish, Louisiana. Dominique Baldonide I came to America with General Lafayette and his army to fight with the American Revolutionary Forces against the British in the American War of Liberation in or about the year 1776. Yes! Following this war, he migrated to Pointe Coupee Parish in Louisiana, where he settled and married a Miss Rabelais. From this union, 2 sons were born. The only children, namely Dominique Baldonade, Coco, Jr., and Joseph Baldonide, I'm not even sure if I'm saying this name right, who also became Coco. Joseph Coco died without having married and had no descendants. Dominique Coco Jr. moved from Pointe Coupee Parish to the adjoining parish of Avoyelles and settled at Hydropolis, Cocoville, a small settlement 1 mile south of Marksville, Louisiana. This settlement was older than Marksville. He established a mercantile business and traded with the Indians and early settlers, now known as Native Americans and early settlers. This spot is where the present Robert Natchez farm is. It may not be anymore because this was written a long time ago. Formerly belonging to Philip Neck. The story goes that the Native Americans referred to him as L'Homme de Coco. That's French for the cocoa man, or man of the coconuts, as he received these with other merchandise from New Orleans. And the Native Americans loved them coconuts. I do too. It seems that the Native Americans could not easily pronounce Baldonide, so they called him Coco, and thereby the name of Coco became the family name in place of Baldonide. Relative to Joseph, the story goes that while on a trip to New Orleans to purchase merchandise for his brother, he disappeared, presumably a victim of the Native Americans. Or it could have been an alligator, who knows. It is therefore through Dominique Baldonide Sr. and Dominique Baldonide Coco Jr. that the family originates in America. Dominique Coco Jr. married 3 times and had 14 children as follows. He married a Zoe Junot and had Roseanne Coco, Dominique Coco, Cephade Coco, Aurelian Coco, Lucien Coco, and Baldwin Coco. I'm assuming Zoe passed away because she had a lot of children in them days. That was hard. I'm just thinking of the no air conditioning and everything else. Second marriage to Caroline Bordelon. And he had Adolphe Coco, Anatoly Coco, Joseph Coco, Valerie Coco, Bienvenue Coco, Philogene Coco, and Eugene, who died at 15 years old. And I'm assuming this poor lady passed away. And after having all these babies. And he married Maya Lazie Sheldon Ledoux. And they had one child. At this point, I guess he was getting kind of old for all that, named Oliver Coco. If your last name is Coco, you're related to me somehow or another. You're all these people. And I didn't come up with this by myself. This was some history given to me by, I want to say my grandfather got it from someone. And the guy who did all this research was named Randy LaCour. He takes credit for all this. But not everybody knows these stories, so maybe somebody out there will learn something. All right, more history of the Coco family. Dominique here we go again. Baldonide Sr. was the original Coco in America. He was of Austrian, German, and Italian extraction. Interesting. He came to America with General Lafayette and his army to fight with the American Revolutionary Forces against the British. Go, Dominique. In the American War of Liberation. In or about the year 1776, we established that. Following this war, he made his way into what is now the state of Arkansas, where he was captured by Native Americans. He escaped and went to Point Coupé Parish, where he married a Miss Rabelais. He operated a floating store on the Mississippi River. He was smart. Near New Roads, Louisiana, and traded with the Native Americans and early settlers. The story goes that the Native Americans could not pronounce the name Baldonide, and they referred to him as L'Homme de Coco, meaning the coconut man, and he received this and other merchandise from New Orleans. The Indians relished them. I'm saying Indians, I'm sorry, I meant Native Americans, but this was done before that was a thing, this paper. Thereby, the name of Coco became the family name in place of Baldonide. From his marriage with Miss Rabelais, he had all those kids that I already told you about and the other marriages. The story goes that the Native Americans from Avoyelles Parish made frequent trips to Point Coupé Parish and traded with Dominique. This persuaded Dominique to move over to Avoyelles Parish. As they moved to what is now the town of Hydropolis, or Cocoville, like I told y'all, south of Marksville. Okay. Traded with the Native Americans, married more times. They're all buried in these Catholic cemeteries. Mansura Catholic Cemetery. Dominique's tomb is highly discernible, it being of imported gray marble, presently in a high state of preservation. I gotta go check this out. So Dominique Baldonide Sr. came from Venice, Italy. So apparently I'm Italian and didn't know it. Wonder if me and Jacob Israel share some of the same relatives. My favorite, one of my most favorite YouTubers, Jacob Israel. Watch his channel. He's got some good stuff. You have no idea what you're missing if you don't. Okay, there's a big family tree of all them people. He definitely was getting busy with all these babies. Poor women had to do all the work of taking care of all these children. Okay, there's lots of family trees in here. That would be too confusing to go through. Let me see if I can get to the point where my people's more involved. I know I'm related to Bordelon somehow or another. They're in here, which that was one of the women he married. Got Mayus and Lemoines. My great-grandmother was a Lemoine. Lordy, this is a lot. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep going. See if there's anything besides all of those family trees, which are very interesting. And then down here, my grandfather says, my grandfather was born July 2nd, 1920, Moorville, Louisiana, and retired from the Air Force May of 1969, and he lived in Boise at the time of his death. Henry John LaCour, Jr. It's the first time I realized that the J in my grandfather's name was John. My grandfather was a big history person, and he liked this kind of stuff. He was also interested in the stuff that I like to watch on YouTube, for anywhere from Bigfoot to UFOs to the spiritual stuff. The good kind of spiritual stuff. We don't like the bad stuff. So, let me read you some more here. Now the little branch here where LaCour and Coco meet, so to speak. LaCour family. This is by John Aaron LaCour III of Baton Rouge, September 29th, 1986. The LaCours of Avoyelles Parish are descendants of Nicholas LaCour, a native of Saint-Jean-des-Champs, bishopric of Cantonay, or Count de Toulouse. He was the son of Antoine de LaCour and François Duclos of Saint-Jean-des-Champs, France. At New Orleans on November 9th, 1726, he married Perrine Brett, who was the daughter of Louis Brett and Elizabeth Roy. Nicholas LaCour and his family were living at Natchez Post, now Natchez, Mississippi, when the Natchez Indian Massacre occurred in November 1729. As a result of the battle between the Indians and the French, one of Nicholas's sons were killed, as well as many Native Americans, and the French Fort Rosalie was destroyed. I think I have animals listening to me, and birds. Nicholas and his wife had 14 children between the years 1727 and 1751. God bless her. One son, Nicholas II, is my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. I'm going to assume that there are a few more greats in there, and he's probably mine too. Well, no, Nicholas is one of my great-great. Okay. Probably 2 or 3 more greats, and it makes him my great-grandfather, something or another. Great to the 6th power, or whatever you want to call that, grandfather. Nicholas II was born at Point Coupé Post on November 19th, 1740, and married at Point Coupé on January 26, 1762. Marie Louise de Coeur was who he married. Marie was the daughter of Etienne de Coeur and Cécile Rondant. On September 8th, 1763, Marie died. On April 15th, 1773, Nicholas II remarried. His second wife was Magdalene Armand, the daughter of Joseph Marie Armand and Cecile Normand. Nicholas and his second wife had 10 children. Good God Almighty, this dude had 24 kids? No, that was his daddy that had the 14. Okay, this dude had 10, including Cyprien LaCour, who is another great-grandfather, born on May 18th, 1778. On February 4th, 1797, Cyprien I married at Avoyelles Post Genevieve Geoffrion. Genevieve was born January 20th, 1779, and was the daughter of Joseph Geoffrion, the Alcalde. I believe that was like the mayor, and Francois Bouchard. Cyprien and Genevieve had 11 children, one of whom was Valerie LaCour, who was born in October 1812. Valerie LaCour married on July 9th, 1833. Eulalie Lemoine, born 1820, the daughter of Jean-Pierre Lemoine and Doralice Dufour. 8 children were born to Valerie and Eulalie LaCour, the third being Jean-Pierre LaCour, who was born in 1845. On December 22nd, 1874, he married Emily Kimball, the daughter of Zachariah Kimball Jr. and Philomene Roy. Jean and Emma had 3 children, Robert, Wilfred, and Albert. Joseph Wilfred LaCour is this dude's great-grandfather, John Aaron. Wilfred married Annette Marcotte, And they had 5 children: Lottie, Hilde, Ronald, Sylvia, and my grandfather, John Aaron LaCour Sr., this guy's grandfather. My grandfather, John Aaron's grandfather, was born on April 11th, 1918, on a farm in Moorville, Louisiana. Now you're getting closer to the territory that I'm familiar with as far as where my relatives are from. During his life, John Aaron's grandfather worked on a farm for a railroad, and after serving in World War II, worked for the United States Post Office. I want to say this guy might be my uncle. Isn't that sad? That's how I don't know. My mama didn't affiliate with my papa's relatives. And now this is how I found out about him. During his life, my grandfather worked on a farm for a railroad, and after serving in World War II, worked for the United States Post Office. On May 5th, 1944, he married John Aaron's grandmother, Helen Laura Rhodes. Helen was the daughter of Marvin Rhodes and Mabel Laura Moore Rhodes. She was born July 23rd, 1920, in Oakdale, Louisiana. Marvin Rhodes is the son of Stephen A. Rhodes of Texas and Riley Rhodes. He was born on June 3rd, 1900, in Longview, Texas. Mabel Laura Moore Rhodes was born October 22nd, 1899, at Leesville, Louisiana, and died in Oakdale in 1975. Her parents were Thomas Woodard Moore, born in 1871 at Leesville, and Mary Virginia Henson Moore, born in 1875 in Vernon Parish. They died in Oakdale in 1953 and 63. Mary's parents were John and Frances Henson. Frances was born in 1843 and in 1927 died. So John Aaron's father, John Aaron LaCour Jr., was born January 22nd, 1947 in Oakdale, Louisiana. He has a younger sister, Sharon Lynn, born November 6th and 52 in Oakdale. This guy, Mr. John, that's the author of this, his father married Sandra Lee Arnold, born in El Paso, Texas, on September 11th, 1948. And they got married in August 1967. There's just like, it gets down to his, basically, John Aaron LaCour III was born February 13th, 1970. This dude's only 2 years older than me, in Alexandria. I have one sister, Jennifer Lee LaCour, who was born March 30th, 71, in Baton Rouge area. So, cousin, where are you? I have paperwork that you did, and since my grandfather, back in God knows when, but this will be awesome to be able to at least, I don't know, make contact. I mean, we don't have to be best friends, but it's just nice to know your family. Maybe I'll look you up on Facebook. So, and this is more the same, just a nostalgia thing from the paper about the LaCours, which is a lot more stuff about who was born and coming from where and yada, yada, yada. Wow. All right, here we go. This sounds Arcade LaCour. My daughter Bailey asked me who Arcade LaCour was a while back because her Ancestry.com connected her to this other fella who found their shared ancestor named Arcade. I was like, well, let me look this up. So here, I'll have to send this to Bailey. Arcade LaCour, born September 7th, 1852, married on January 10th, 1879, Josephine Grimion, daughter of Valerian Grimion II and Josephine LaCour. There were 2 children of this union. Emmanuel LaCour, who married Odell Quinn. And on the other side of the family, I have Quinn cousins on the Kroger end. Lucy LaCour married Leonce Lemoine. Here comes that name again. We're all cousins that got married to each other, I guess, back in the day. Not me, them. Keep the blood pure. Josephine Grimion died, and Arcade married Marguerite Grimion, the daughter of another Grimion person. Cedrin Grimion, and Azima Lemoine. We know of 6 children of the second marriage of Arcade LaCour. All right, so Arcade is my great-great-grandpa. Now we're getting somewhere where I'm not lost. He had a son named Henry LaCour, who was my great-grandfather, a.k.a. Cy. I've heard some stories about him being this miser dude. He married Lena Lemoine, daughter of Thomas Lemoine, and Louise Coco. There's our connection. And then in there was these other great uncles. Oliver LaCour that married Clementine Mayu, Eulalie LaCour that married Wade Lemoine, Edward LaCour, who married Lorianne Lemoine, and Louis LaCour, who married Margaret Barr. Philip LaCour married Ellen Milner. Whew. And then there was a Rosamie LaCour, born on May 22nd, 1855. No information. Maybe she just didn't get married and they want to talk about it. Okay. So, there we are. So, Cy/Henry and Lena are my great grandparents. They had a lot of kids too, even twins. My papa had twin brothers. When he became the brother of twins when he was 1. These poor women, man. I guess they just were, I mean, they're poor bodies. Couldn't give them a rest. Lord have mercy. And here is a newspaper article about my grandfather. He was very serve-minded, and I belong to a group of people that are very serve-minded, and I really enjoy that we have this in common because I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, even though they didn't live far away. But we seem, like I said, we obviously shared quite a few of the same interests. And this is where my glasses need to change to cheaters, wherever they are, buried up in all this. Okay. Because I can't read this tiny writing. And thank you for if you stayed with me for this long, because I don't know if I could have made it. Henry J. LaCour Jr. has a hobby. It is helping anybody, anything. For the last 20 years in particular, since he has retired from the Air Force, he has worked full-time at this hobby. He is involved at England Air Force Base with retirees, gathers clothing to distribute to the needy, supplies books and magazines and other services for nursing homes and all sorts of other things. He is also involved few are more up on local, state, and national politics and affairs. He seldom misses a meeting at the police jury, city council, or school board. He subscribes to a dozen or so national publications and has mailed clippings from people all over the country. He estimates that he writes about 700 letters a year, mostly to elected officials in Washington, often to the president when he has a point to make. He makes it. Go, Grandpa. Excuse me, I don't even call him Grandpa. I call him Papa. I didn't even know he was doing all this after he died. I mean, I knew he wrote letters and did things, and my grandmother and aunt kind of made fun of him for it, but he was civic-minded and a server. And you know what he says? Anything I do for my God and my country, said LaCour. He is too strong a Christian to hate, so you might say communism is his pet peeve. His description of a communist is a person who is convinced he can never be a capitalist. His number one project, though, involves prisoners of war and soldiers missing in action. He is deeply concerned about American boys who are still imprisoned or unaccounted for in all parts of the world. A 44-year-old quest. This project began 44 years ago. During World War II, LaCour had the pleasure of assisting in the liberation of thousands of Americans and their allies from German POW camps. He went from the CC to the U.S. Army in 1940 and served for 6 years. Soon after his discharge, he enlisted in the Air Force and served 23 more years, retiring in 1969. LaCour was a charter member of the 13th Armored Division, which was formed in 1942. This group trained stateside until January 1945, when it was shipped to France for a move through Germany. Although LaCour and his buddies were in the thick of the war for less than 6 months, they played a major role in wrapping it up. They joined General Patton's Third Army and took control of the Ruhr, the Rose Pocket, taking more than 300,000 German prisoners. You go, Papa. I was never wounded, but I had some scares, says LaCour with a laugh. I had some bullets whistle through my clothes. Dear Lord, Jesus was watching over you, Papa. Bullets whistling through my clothes. I probably passed out. The worst was the machine gun fire. LaCour remembers that the Danube River, which inspired the Blue Danube Waltz, was a disappointing green color. He also recalls crossing the Isar River in assault boats when the current was estimated to be 70 feet per second. This plus the gunfire. Only 3 of the 8 boats made it across. LaCour, as a platoon leader, lost a lot of close friends in that crossing. His division took Hitler's hometown Braunau and set up headquarters in the house where Hitler was born. You go, Papa. LaCour does not know how many camps his task force later liberated, because in some there were just a few prisoners. Then there was Stalag 17. The largest was Stalag 17, he said, referring to the camp that was made famous by the stage play and movie of the same name, which won an Oscar for William Holden. But it was already famous over there before we got there. We had heard these stories of horror about Stalag 17 from soldiers who had managed to escape. There was, of course, considerable confusion. At one time, the task force was trying to figure out what to do with 6,000 liberated Americans and Allies and 2,400 German prisoners all at the same time. One camp in particular sticks out in LaCour's memory. I went in one barracks, and these 8 Air Force men were handcuffed across the bed with a Red Cross package in front of them. They, the Germans, would do anything to tantalize them and make them suffer, he said. LaCour was stationed in Germany, again in the early 1950s. My mom was there. She was a kid. And he was able to trace the route his division took in 1945 from France through Germany to Austria. All this was 44 years ago. 44 is my number, and there it just popped up. Even though, obviously, this was written in 1989. But anyway, all this was 44 years ago, but First Sergeant H.J. LaCour Jr., retired, is still trying to get America's brave fighting men located and released. With him, it's a full-time job. And then here is a letter that, I'm still trying to figure out how I got all this stuff. To my grandfather, Henry LaCour, USAF, retired, Voice, Louisiana, from the American Foundation. Dear Henry, without exception, you are the most dedicated, sincere, resolved, and committed man that I am privileged to know, in the cause and love of God, country, family, and fellow man. Your research is positively invaluable to the endeavors and programs of the Americanism Foundation. I use and accept a great deal from the material that you research for us and send to us. Surely you have probably heard some of your material in our syndicated radio broadcast. The victory belongs to God, to truth, to righteousness, Henry. It is ours, if only more people would understand that and commit their efforts to the cause and love of God, family, country, freedom, and fellow man. I take the liberty of enclosing a Miss Liberty Century shuttle tape and one of our Veterans Day program tapes as a token of our thanks for all the great work that you do for the Foundation. No way could we ever be grateful enough to you except to assure you that I tried to review all the material and extract from your research as much as I can for our many endeavors. Thank God that you know that your work pleases Almighty God very much and that your work is very effective. We will continue to share and borrow from your research and keep on keeping on. Sowing seeds for Almighty God. That was a confirmation, by the way, sowing seeds. Ever praying and working for a greater harvest unto his kingdom with your invaluable help. For this and for your faith and support, I am profoundly grateful to you more than I can express. May you and your loved ones have a most blessed and Merry Christmas and a happy, prosperous, and healthy New Year, and many, many more to come. God love you. Gratefully and faithfully, N.M. Camdries, M.D., President. Now, all this was going on. This was 1986. This is, oh my gosh, December 10th, 1986 was also a fateful date for me for another reason. But the point is, I didn't know about a lot of this stuff until he's since long been dead. And my poor grandfather died of a cancer, probably from exposure to chemicals during the war. He died in 1995, I believe. He's buried in the military cemetery, and Mama Trudy is buried there too, as well. Anyhow. So my mom's side of the family has a long history in Louisiana, all the way back to the Revolutionary War, where most people of French extraction in Louisiana are from Acadia, which were people from Brittany, France, the Brittany area of France, that went to Acadia and were forced out by the British and came here. Our family came directly out of France. And they were kind of snooty about it from what I hear, but both groups are French. Now, I'm sure they married into other, obviously they married into the people. But for the most part, looks like a lot of married into families, the same kind of families. Of course, this was all going on during the time of slavery, and they were landowners, and unfortunately during that time frame, I'm pretty sure they owned some people. From what I read through some of this before, because I'm not going to go through every little page, they did, and after the war, of course, after the Civil War, the people were freed. So I'm sure wealth was lost, which is how it should be. I think they still farmed, because that's what you do to make money. It's basically in the Louisiana is agriculture. In those days, up until, I guess, World War II, and then, you had the farm, but then other things, industries began and all that. You just worked the farm yourself, or you had sharecropper people working with you, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really know a lot other than that. So I hope to meet some of these LaCours and Cocos, and what's that other name? Lemoine, Coco, LaCour, Baldoni. Interesting that I have an Italian. So, also, when I went to Vermilionville, a Native American tour guide, very, very versed in the history, also knew of some of the Cocos, and told me a story about certain Cocos that murdered his grandparents for being Native American, basically. They were very persecuted, just like a minority back in those days. So hopefully I ain't too related to those two. He named the names. I don't remember specifically those names. I probably could look them up, but it was a long time ago, so I'm sure they're all dead. So just hate that. But thankfully, we live in times where people are not treated, well, we try to keep him from being treated that way. Good people keep on, like my grandfather, who obviously was a man of God and was always trying to help with his research and his volunteer of his free time. Happy Sunday.